Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Hospitality Marketing, live show number 220, being broadcasted, simulcasted on Facebook, YouTube, and now officially LinkedIn with my special co-host, Lily Mockerman. And early to the game, I should say, also Mr. Edwards, one of my frequent co-hosts. But Lily, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here, Lauren. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, it's been long overdue. You've been more than gracious in patience where it's like, hey, Lauren, when are we going to get on the show? I'm like, you know what? That's a heck of a question. So I'm glad that you were so persistent saying, come on, let's get on the show.
Well, after looking through the article list, I feel like it really worked out to my advantage because there is some interesting stuff to discuss today.
Yeah, Robert does a pretty good job of the list. And the Rob Rose and the top, he's done that curated list now for us for many years. And there's some weeks where we go off the rails and don't really focus on it, but this week there is a good list of them. That's for sure. But some weeks.
Let's be a little bit more honest there. There's some weeks we get to some of the list.
Some of the show. Okay, that might be more accurate. But Lily, the show is yours. Like I said, it's a privilege to have you on with us, and I've been dying to learn more about not only what you do in the company you've created, but I have one deep burning. How many? You have two assistants I got to deal with. You are a busy woman to have two assistants. Ed, do you have two assistants?
I have no assistants. I think I'm everyone else's assistant.
It might be that too, but no, Lily, please, however much you'd like to tell us about you, your company, what you do, your organization, and anything else you'd like to talk about today.
Absolutely. Well, just to make sure that we're all clear here, I technically only have one assistant, one marketing director. So Marcella Trujillo is our marketing director. So, okay. But yes, no, I'm really glad to be here, and just to kind of introduce a little bit about us for those who may not know us from the show. We are from Total Customized Revenue Management, also very well known as TCRM. I'm the CEO of the company, founded just about 7.5 years ago now. We're coming up on that anniversary here in December. And basically, we focus on all things revenue management, whether that's through education, consulting. We do a lot of task force for short-term needs. We do some outsourced revenue management for people who want a really high-quality service that's proactive and focuses on what's happening not just in the next 30 days, but in the next 12 months for their hotels. And so we really try to go above and beyond from a quality perspective, and that's sort of our claim to fame. Along with our focus on profitability metrics as opposed to just top line revenue, and also our focus on total revenue management, which is still one of those fun, evolving sort of subjects in the hospitality industry, but trying to educate the industry more on that and helping hotels that are ready to launch into revenue management programs for their restaurants, their spas, their golf, all of those fun things.
Wow. Okay.
That's great. So what would you consider as the profile of the properties that you and your team shine most for?
We can do just about anything. We work with both brands and independents, but honestly, I feel like we can make the most impact for our full service clients. So we really primarily target full service, whether brands or independents. We have a nice mix of both. But when we're looking at a strategic assessment or a system audit or things like that, we really want to ideally work mostly with companies where we can make a huge impact on their revenues, right? So we'll work with anybody, of course, but typically we find that that's the best partnership that aligns with our goals and their goals, and that's really important to us.
Awesome. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, complexity creates opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great. And so what made you decide to leave the comfort of employment and go out and be crazy and start your own company?
Well, honestly, back at the time when I founded the company, which was about 2012, I was getting a lot of calls from headhunters, and I was starting to understand, through my revenue management training, we're all about supply and demand, right? So the supply of talented revenue managers was low and the demand was high. And so I was looking at how can I really do this for more than just one or two hotels without being saddled with 15 hotels, because I really didn't feel like I could have a good impact with 15. But also for those of us in revenue management who have been around the block for a little while, we tend to get a little bit bored with only one or two hotels. And so I decided to just go out on my own. I figured if the demand was there, it might be a good time to test the waters. And I spent like my entire life savings in the first year to cover my expenses. But yeah, I think it's definitely been a good marriage of the demand that's out there. And I think that we go in waves, right? It kind of tapered off a little bit. Most of the revenue positions were filled there for a while, but as the industry's evolving and everything keeps changing and getting more complex, we're running into that same supply and demand again. So we're just struggling to find revenue managers who really go beyond pricing, and those top tier people command higher salaries. So that's why, honestly, we're the quality, not the low cost provider, because we look for those quality people and we're able to attract great talent because everybody works from a remote environment, which they love. And we have a great work-life balance kind of culture.
That's great.
Yeah. It's been a fun ride for sure.
I'm typing.
Lauren, are you typing? Okay. Do you want me to run the QA, Lauren?
What's
that?
You want
me to run the QA?
Why don't you do the QA for a little bit for me while I'm responding to people piping through real quick? I got distracted getting these up.
So, what's your typical engagement look like? You had listed a couple of different scenarios that you guys shine in. So, if there's a hotelier that's interested in understanding what's the best way to engage with you, what's kind of the general rule for someone net new who you haven't worked with?
Well, I like to honestly start with a strategic assessment. Not everybody always sees the value of that, but I actually just posted something about that today because we have an October sale on those. So fun little Halloween message there from TCRM. But the great thing about the strategic assessment is that it's a huge deep dive into every single aspect of what's going on for the property. So we look at US industry trends, we look at their market trends, we look at things like airlift and office space and how those are affecting market demand. We love to include the CBRE Hotel Horizons report where that's available for a little extra analytics. Obviously, like you guys, we curate a lot of information from the industry so we know exactly what's going on. And then we also do a real deep dive into their competitive set. Number one, the comp set that they're actually using. And then number two, the comp set we think they should be using. If those two things don't happen to align for whatever reason, we'll look at both and kind of make a recommendation at the end of the day of who they should be paying attention to from a pricing standpoint or a mix standpoint. And then we also go into really everything about their revenue strategy. So especially this time of year, it's a great time of year to do it, which is why we're running the sale, because if you look at what you set out to do, right, everybody creates a budget and a marketing plan for their hotels. In October, a lot of people are creating their budget and marketing plans for the next year, but they're not always looking back at what did I say I was going to do this year and did it actually happen? And if it didn't happen, what got in the way? And if it did happen, did I set my sights properly, or was there money left on the table, more that we could have done? Could we have been more ambitious this year? And really understanding the performance year to date on all of those metrics is important to us as we look into what their opportunities are for future strategy. So we look a lot into that. Another thing that we focus on, as I had mentioned earlier, is profitability. So we're also looking at what is the cost of acquisition for each channel, what sort of marketing are they using in terms of their direct booking strategy or pay-per-click, different advertising through Google or through something like travel ads. What is that really doing to the bottom line? Is direct booking still your lowest cost channel after you've thrown 15 different things at it? Because we know that happens from time to time. And what's the ancillary spend, which a lot of people aren't focusing on either? Which channel brings you the most ancillary spend in a full service hotel? So we kind of look at all of those things as an aggregate. We also audit the system at a high level for any potential issues. And then we produce what's typically a 50 to 75 page report. But I think that also scares a few people off, because when do they ever have time to read 50 to 75 pages, right? So we have this handy little summary at the end that says, okay, in case you don't have time to get to all of this, here's the 5 key things that you need to focus on. Here's the order you need to focus on them. Here's when you should activate them in order to get the most revenue. And what we're also adding right now for 2020 with all of this talk about recession, right? All I'm hearing now is it's going to happen. Nobody knows when, but at some point it's going to happen. Really creating sort of an exit strategy. So I talked about this on another webinar not too long ago with Navis, and I likened it to an airline, right? Everybody wants to know how to get out of the plane if it's going down. Nobody really expects it to, but you've got to have that plan in place, because when you're nose down heading into the ocean is not the time to come up with a plan to get out of danger. So we feel that the same thing should be done right now for hotels as they look at 2020. So sure, base it on the current forecast, which is already pretty much flat from all of the major forecasting, your PKF and your CBRE, your STAR forecasts, all looking at kind of a plus or minus 1% on RevPAR. And I know one of our articles talks to that already happening for Hilton in Q4, that they're really seeing that flatten out. So base your budget and your marketing plan on the current environment for sure, but also have a plan ready to go in case the bottom falls out. Are you going to be the discounter to get occupancy? Are you going to hold your rate at possibly the expense of revenue while your competitors are discounting? Which competitors are most likely to kind of be the first ones down that hill of rate discounting? How are you going to react to that depending on who that competitor is, and looking at all of those different things? So that's my best case scenario, because I really think it brings the most value to the client. But another one for, sorry, just adjusting there. Another one for Q4 that we're coming up against a lot is vacant revenue management positions that we're just honestly doing task force for, because those people still in positions are probably holding out for their January bonus. So there's not as much movement right now, and we can kind of step in and seamlessly run everything for them till they're able to get the right person in the door.
Near and dear to my heart is the combination of marketing and revenue management. You and I've had these conversations before. And yes, you have a great analogy about the plane crashing, and better to be prepared than it is to be forewarned in that sense, I guess. But how do you see, from knowing that this is going to happen and the preparations that you're talking about, and other than the reactions of your market, your competitive set and so forth, how do you see this being different in the sense of revenue management having more tools with its collaboration with marketing, that it can maybe see a little farther in the future perhaps? Or is it that you have more resources to better adapt the rate strategies and occupancy strategies that revenue management controls? I mean, how do you see that play differently this time than compared into previous histories of, oh my gosh, the world has come to an end, revenue goes this way, marketing goes this way, and hopefully we'll both survive or something?
Well, Lauren, that partly depends if they're sharing any information between the two different disciplines, which we still come across this all the time, that, there's all these great marketing tools that have analytic dashboards that revenue managers just drool over, right? Let's be honest, we're all about the analytics. And oftentimes a lot of the people in the marketing side may be more focused on the creative or the design or the high-level strategy than the analytics. But also the revenue managers don't always get to see those analytic tools. It's the same way with sales tools. There's a lot of hotels that have Noland that never share that login or that information with their revenue managers. So I think that's the first thing, is really making sure that there is that integration now so that they can have a good effect. But you've got to have that conversation, because honestly, if marketing puts out a promo that targets all the dates that the revenue manager behind the scenes knew were going to perform well either way, you're leaving money on the table. And vice versa, right? They may not be targeting need periods where the revenue manager needs help. So we really encourage those two departments to work much more closely together. And obviously that's a little bit easier in an independent environment, but important for both brands and independents as well.
Well, and especially because marketing can be more effective the further in advance they know that there's potential softness.
Yes.
Right.
They can run longer burn, steady state marketing efforts, and can also report back, from time to time on how that's performing versus the soft time, to potentially get a head start on, changing rate strategy.
Yes.
So you may find that you can, in certain soft periods, spend your way out of having to drop rate.
Absolutely.
And potentially take advantage of the fact that your comp set absolutely is not doing that. And this is something I say to anyone who's trying to prepare for the worst case scenario here. Your knee-jerk reaction to cut marketing and cut sales is the same knee-jerk reaction that every other hotel is going to do. So someone in your market hopefully will be smart enough to not do that, reap the benefit of the lower cost of channel because of the fact that none of the comp set is spending on that channel, and also reap the benefit of the additional exposure you'll get, especially in search.
Yep, absolutely. I completely agree with you, Edward. When revenues are low, you spend more on sales, marketing, and revenue. Mm-hmm. Make sure they're performing. They're not just, sitting around and looking pretty, of course. But if you've got really great professionals working on this that are super talented, then they're going to be able to get you out of that hole. You've really got to spend money to make money, right? You have to spend time to make time, spend money to make money. That's just the way that the world works. And I think that a lot of people, to your point, see these areas as cost centers. And they are not. They are revenue centers that happen to have a commission attached, so to speak. So I think it's really important as we go into 2020, especially for hotels that maybe aren't already at the top of their game, that they really put more money and more effort into this and plan to budget that way.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't think that's Tim. It might be Holly, because I gave Tim's link. So it might be Holly.
It is Holly.
No, I want to be Tim today. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Holly.
Hey, Holly.
Lily.
Hi, Holly.
I'm here for you, Lily. Because
she never comes for us.
She's our unicorn. We see her once in a blue moon where all of a sudden it's like, Holly's here.
Well, I have a very busy life. Sorry I'm late. I was Facebook fighting as usual.
Okay.
But I am excited. I know, Lily, you live here in Arizona, right?
I do. See, this is the only way that Holly and I can actually see each other is at conferences out of town or, webinars from across town. I don't know. We never seem to get together in person in Arizona.
It is a little bit weird. But anyways, I heard you were going to be on the show. I love your work. I know your clients, and I wanted to hear what you had to say. So
thank you.
Please speak on.
All right. We were just talking about assessments and marketing in 2020, basically.
I have a young woman out of Bali who is asking, can you elaborate more on plans for recession? What are some of the things that you want to can't read that right. I think she's translating what she knows in one language versus what English is for another. But I think she's asking a little bit more strategy about what you would do in a recession period.
Absolutely. So it really is going to depend a little bit on your market. So first you need to analyze, well, most importantly, do you have the right comp set? Is your comp set also what your guests consider your comp set? Because let's be honest, your guests determine your comp set. You don't get to pick and choose, right? It's who are your guests buying instead of you when they go somewhere else? Who are they looking at along with you? So first, make sure you have the right comp set because otherwise every other step is going to be based on inaccurate data.
But and you have situational comp set as well.
Absolutely. You may have a group. Transient.
You'll have hotels that maybe are below what you would consider a comp set, but certain points of the year they may step up into your comp set. You have hotels that the majority of their room types may not be your comp set, but a series of their room types are in your comp set. It's a much more complicated scenario to think about, seasonally, group based, and it should be constantly changing.
Absolutely. And I do hear from a lot of people on this topic, well, my ownership won't let me change my comp set. Okay, run a second star report, keep the one comp set, that's fine. They can use that data. But if you make decisions on that data just because it's in your management agreement, it's not helping anybody. So let them measure with consistent data, no big deal. You can still have your pricing set, your Demand 360 set, and a second star set on a comp set that you think makes sense for you. So first, once you nail down what that's going to be, and also maybe to Edward's point, since it does shift, look at if you are a luxury or upper upscale hotel, chances are high that in the case of a recession, those hotels are going to start to dip down and compete with your mid-scale or your regular upscale hotels. That happens almost every thing. And honestly, if you're a mid-scale, also keep that in mind, because if your luxury hotel is only $10 above your Best Western rate, for example, you're really going to struggle to get that customer when they see more value in the luxury. So there's going to be some price value relationship things coming up, and you want to identify those in advance. What are those impacts going to be? Really investigate the historic performance of your competitors. What have they done previously? Buy a report if you have to from STAR with a 10-year running history. Look back at 2009. Did their rates drop faster? What did the market do? Those types of key data points are going to be really important to understanding what is likely to happen in your market. If you don't have that information for any reason, or your comp set has dramatically changed since 2009, which could be very likely for many hotels, then you want to really look at their performance when the market's low. So think about your last couple periods of slow demand. Maybe it's off season or whatever, and look for those hotels that were quick to drop rate. Those are also the hotels that are going to drop rate at the first sign of a recession.
Yeah, and your nearer term comp set or data set is going to be better, because going all the way back to 2009, that hotel may be under new ownership. It may be managed by a different company. So you do have to be cautious going all the way back to the last time we had, systemic recession. So like you said, going seasonal softness and looking at how the players in your market is a good way to see how the current players at those hotels are acting.
Right. It's really all about consumer psychology at this stage, right?
Yep.
It's the psychology of what do people do when they're faced with a threat? How are they going to react? Is it fight or flight, essentially, but from a business perspective? So when you've identified that, then you have to identify how do you want to react. So at the Hotel Data Conference in Nashville, they actually had a great presentation about how long does it take after the first hotel drops rate for the market to follow suit. And there were a lot of findings there, but essentially there weren't any winners per se. So it really depends on what you want to see, because the first to drop rate really had the best occupancy. But those who waited a little bit more to drop rate had obviously stronger rates, but really lagged the market in occupancy. So the other thing is
So in the end, no clear winners.
Yeah, no clear winners.
Very interesting.
Let's be honest, there's no silver bullet to say there's a recession, but not for me. Like, it's just not going to happen. So what you want to know is, what are your priorities and what's your ownership's priorities? If you want a higher profitability level, you might be focused on rate. However, if you're in a full service hotel with a lot of amenities that are driven by guest spend, occupancy may be the way to go, because if you can get them attracted to your hotel with a attractive rate compared to your comp set, and then get them to stay on property and spend their money with you, you may make up for the rate in other areas of your hotel, but you've also got to have a proactive strategy to make sure that spend does stay in your hotel.
Right.
I heard you mention, you can buy a STAR report or change your comp set. Somebody in your organization, and I heard you talking about this as I was tuning in, how you're focusing on the profitability of the business that you're getting. Are you working with Calibri? Are you getting their stuff?
I wish we were working closer with Calibri, but I'm a huge fan of their profitability focus. The COPE metric is a really excellent way to focus on profitability. We're actually doing a free profitability study right now for hotels within the US that want to participate. And we may expand this to other countries in the future. I know there's a lot of them watching today, but in case we just want to start with the US to make sure that we have data that makes sense. But essentially, we're digging down into profitability by channel for all of our customers, which a lot of people have likened to Calibri. But what we're doing a little bit differently here is we're also looking for ancillary spend by channel, to the point that I just made, because it's not uncommon, to be honest, for some hotels to find out that OTAs are their highest profit channel, which shocks them every single time. but it's because certain OTA guests are spending more on property. They're there for the full experience, and the experience-driven guest often goes on a Booking.com or an Expedia to really see everything that's available to them. So with the right strategy, you can capture more ancillary spend from those. And it's really kind of interesting because if you get out ahead of that before anything happens with the market, you can kind of boost your profitability line. And when we talk about profitability, we really mean gross profit, right? We're not talking about labor costs or anything like that in this case, but the room revenue minus the cost of acquisition plus ancillary spend minus ancillary cost. So looking at your food and beverage cost and the cost of providing treatments, for example, in the spa.
So if hotels want to participate in your survey, how do they do that?
All you have to do is shoot an email over to thinkupstudy@tcrmservices.com and say that you'd like to be included. That's it. We'll send a list of the information that we need. We have a very strict confidentiality agreement. And the huge benefit to participating is we will be giving out up to 2 benchmarking reports. The hotel can choose what they want to look at. So for example, a Marriott hotel may want to see all the other Marriotts in our study to see how their profitability stacks up by channel. Or a resort may want to see resorts from all over the US. Or somebody might want to see something that's more local. So depending on the size of the participants in the study, will give us the best opportunity to benchmark that. We're requiring at least 10 competitors are included in each report just to make sure that the aggregate is there and make sure that nobody's information is compromised or easy to deduce. But right now we have verbal commitments from over 500 hotels. So we're really excited about the output of this study, and we're kind of just gathering the data now. It's a little difficult time because of budget season, so it's taking a little longer than we had hoped, but hopefully by the beginning of the year we'll have the study released.
The hotel 5-month budget season.
Can you put that? Yeah, can you say that again so I can type it into the shared chat?
Yeah, of course. It's thinkupstudy@tcrmservices.com.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. We're really excited about this because we're one of the things, and actually, I don't mean to jump ahead, but it was something that really came up for me on the second article that we were looking at about independence and kind of the difference between soft brand independence and the true independent that's not affiliated with any brand. So one of the things that we're really interested to see out of this study is how do the soft brands and the independents stack up for profitability, because we're including the franchise fee kind of costs as part of the study. So
that's great.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting, I think, for operators to better understand, like, okay, there's more marketing costs for me as an independent versus the brand loyalty, but the brand loyalty also comes at a cost. So across an aggregate of multiple hotels, like who's the winner? So like a little boxing match.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah, it will be.
It'll be interesting, and I wonder if you may, if it's close, are you going to have to look at the overall cost difference for a hotel? Because obviously beyond demand, you get more from a brand. You get training, you get other abilities to hire easier because people are trained on specific sets. So if it is one of those things where it's neck and neck, one thing that may be interested in looking at is the overall human capital cost difference between the hotels to see if that clears it up. If that moves the soft brand ahead, or if it doesn't. Because then you're fully measuring the value of a soft brand versus being fully independent.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had mentioned Calibri, Holly. I think that this study will be, we don't see it as competition because we're just doing a one-time study, right? We're not doing a subscription. We're not trying to sell any software or anything like that. If anything, I think that it's something that will actually help people see the value of a service like Calibri, where they're giving you benchmarking on an ongoing basis to the comp set. So I know right now that's historical, and our study will also be historical, but what I see for the future is something like that being in something like a Demand 360 report, where you can see into the future how how are things coming up and how can you really strategize your optimal mix around the most profitable business.
I've been a little bit astounded that more people haven't embraced the Calibri. I mean, it's expensive, but I work with a group and I push them to get the reports and take a look at what their data is compared to their competitive set. And it's been insanely valuable, although sometimes they still don't listen to it, but whatever.
Well, but that's actually the point.
I know.
You know, we as we were moving in certain directions, we started asking a lot of our clients what they do with certain data that they have, and we were frustrated to hear that in a lot of cases, the reporting that they have, their answer was, you know, we talk about it in meetings, or we don't do anything with it. And you know, and so that's challenging, and I think it comes down to something I always give for advice when we talk about anything new, which is have a strategy for what you're hoping to accomplish out of anything that you're going to buy or do, because without strategy, you're just spending money, and you're unlikely to maximize the opportunity.
Yeah. I think it goes back, Edward, to exactly what we were talking about right before Holly came on too, about you have to spend money to make money. And, you know, we were saying sales, marketing, revenue is so important, but you do make a good point that if it's just sitting there on the shelf, it's not doing anybody any good. Right. I was actually talking with a potential client that has a portfolio of hotels, and you know, she said to me, well, we have Demand 360, but we're probably going to cancel it out of next year's budget because nobody's using it. And I was like, oh, stab. As a revenue manager, that's so valuable for us. And I'm like, you've got it. I feel like the solution maybe is get them to use it, because you know, you're saving a little bit of money, but there's so much information there that can help you win that it's really, I mean, I try very hard not to promote any one particular service, but to be honest, I don't think there's anything else like Demand 360, and I don't think there's anything else like Calibri. They're two different things, but both I think are so valuable to have that level of information.
But I think we need to be honest. I mean, we've all been around long enough. We've ridden through a couple of pullbacks in our hospitality careers. This phase that we've been in for a few years now is the fat and happy phase, where most people are looking over dozens, if not thousands of dollars to reach for the easy stuff, the big stuff, because it's been easy and it's been big. You know, and there's a substantial switch that happens when all of a sudden you do have to tighten up, and you have to do everything you can to land the right business and to be active, to keep the business performing. And that's actually, as a vendor, those are the times I like the most. I mean, with Easy Yield, our biggest years of growth were after the financial crisis. And it was because leading up to that point, we were having the conversation we were having with hotels is, you know, I'm not looking at rate and inventory that aggressively. And, you know, I don't mind having 6 people to do it. And and then, you know, financial crisis hits, carpet gets pulled out, our phone's ringing off the hook from anyone we had talked to for the, you know, years leading up to that with, hey, you know, do you guys still do that thing? And we need more of that. And it was the biggest 3 years of growth for the company. And it was, you know, the conversation, the product was no different. The difference was the hotels became focused on efficiency, channel mix, you know, really understanding. One of the biggest things you got from Easy Yield was we could actually explain to you how your markups worked with an FBA. It was always blew my mind how almost no hotel ever actually understood how markups worked and, you know, how much real money was being, you know, added on top of that net rate. So, you know, hopefully we should not, you know, economic kind of standards say that we should not see a massive pullback. We should see an easing into a, you know, some type of contraction. And hopefully that easing gives this time hotels the chance to sharpen up, because right now is when you should be preparing to sharpen up. I should have always been doing it because profitability is good too, but more so than ever, that should be the focus now and going into next year is how are you going to sharpen, how are you going to become very effective at finding the best dollars and making sure you always bring them in, even if it's just far easier to get some of the bad dollars in.
Yeah.
Mr. Robert Cole, I don't know if you know Lily, Robert Cole.
Hey, Robert.
Hello, Lily. Hi, how are you?
I figured I'd match
I'm
you today
sorry.
with a headset.
Yeah,
That's right. I'm sorry I missed the earlier part. I mean, which tool were you really supporting? I mean, I know between Lauren and Holly and Ed, they certainly prefer one Ouija boards, roulette wheels, or just doing nothing.
Dartboard. Dartboard is my favorite.
Oh, dartboard.
I'm sorry.
Lauren is upgraded to a dartboard. I apologize.
Flipping a coin.
Well, I kept my crystal ball out of view for today's.
Oh.
I didn't want to give away all my secrets. It's just over there.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Always pushing the boundaries. Excellent.
Yes, absolutely.
I do have to apologize for my lackluster engagement, but I guess since we're now on LinkedIn officially, we're piping over. I'm getting a lot of "Who are you? What are you?" Because it's posting on EU and.
You mean people are actually watching now? Oh. It's like going to change our whole strategy.
This is a live show. Because I mean, I got somebody from Milan. I got somebody Bali. Just it's like okay, yeah, we're doing because it's on LinkedIn now, and again because it's a business conversation and an industry conversation, it is engaging for these people to pop up with it now. It's not just hey, there's something live watching. It's like they're actually asking like legitimate questions, like explain more of this. I'm like,
So we're done with the show if we have to answer.
So no more easy stuff. It's like holy, they're asking hard questions. But anyway, no, please go right ahead.
So Lily, what other tools do you use? I'm always interested in tools. I mean, there's so much data available that picking the right stuff is kind of critical.
It is, and it really also I just saw another post. I think it was this morning on LinkedIn. What is the best PMS for an independent hotel? Well.
None.
It depends. Yes, none. And if you have to pick from what's out there, a lot of people are looking for, this is number one. Well, it depends on your market. It depends on your revenue strategy. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. It depends if you need it to be front desk friendly or data heavy or, there's so many different components.
It even depends on what other technologies you have in your stack.
Right.
Because that may eliminate half the field.
Yeah, it does. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, make the wrong technology choices on these big buys because they only think of the first 5 questions to ask. So we try to get ahead of that with our clients when they're looking for new technology. We'll go through the whole RFP process with them, and we come up with our own RFP that's really extensive and focuses on what they really need to be focused on, whether they know it or not at the time. We know the right questions to ask them in hotelier language and then how to translate those into technology language. But to go back to Holly's question, one of the things that I think is really essential for any particularly full service hotel in today's environment is some type of a BI tool. So the 3 that we kind of come up against, or not against because we don't sell software, the 3 that we use the most with our clients are OTA's Revenue Insight, which is a little bit limited in the number of PMS versions that it can support. It's mostly focused in Opera, but it's a really quick integration and easy to use and no lag time to pull a PACE report, which is nice. You can also get PACE by room type, by rate plan, by market segment. There's all sorts of things you can do with that one, which makes it nice and friendly and easy to use. Another one is Focal Revenue. So that is Mike Metzger's tool that he's put together. He came from a revenue management background, not a tech background. So that makes it really helpful and also integrates with more systems than OTA's does. And then, of course, Rev Intel is kind of the big system, the big whale out there, provided by Rainmaker. And that integrates with a very, very wide variety of systems and has a lot of tech money backing it. So the most important thing, of course, with the BI tools is you have to have clean data because the tool is only going to do you as much good as your data. So having a data cleanliness program in your hotel is something that I've written and spoken about a couple of different times, making sure that the data that's going in is actually accurate. So those are some of my favorites. And then, of course, you've got your typical PMS, CRS, RMS.
Question, do you think choosing a PMS system first or a BI tool first what sequence do you recommend?
I recommend choosing the PMS first because it operates your entire hotel. There's so many key features in there that have to be looked at, like the way that you want to run your housekeeping department, the way you want to run your front desk. So it's not just a revenue management focus. And that's, I think, what our service kind of brings to the table: people from operations, people from revenue, people from sales. So we're understanding the priorities in all of those different areas. Most of our revenue managers honestly came up through the operations. So we know some of those pain points, whether it comes from housekeeping or front desk, that are important to the operation, because if you have an operations only person looking at it, you're going to miss out on revenue things that you need or reporting. If you have a revenue only person looking at it, you're going to miss out on that operational component that allows you to run your hotel efficiently. So you've really got to look at both of those. And because of that, I feel like selecting the PMS is the most important kind of key piece, and you build everything else off of that. There's enough BI tools out there to work with different systems that you can kind of select from there.
And one thing to the question of PMS, because I get asked this a lot, and my suggestion always, I mean, first of all, if you're a net new hotel, congratulations. You get to pick a PMS without any real heartache. However, most hotels are actually talking about switching PMS providers. The very first exercise that you should do is every department that interfaces with any aspect of the property management system today, you should have them list for you the problems and the special benefits they get out of their use of the property management system, and get them to attempt to weight how much that impacts their day, whether it's by minutes, hours, what have you. The reason for this is, first, the very first thing you're going to do with that list is go back to your existing vendor and say, here's all the problems we have with your technology. More often than not, anyone that I've given this advice to, when they go to their vendor with that, they magically find out that that was actually taken care of in release XYZ that you haven't done. And you can upgrade to that release, and magically all of those are now eliminated in your decisions. The next thing you can ask is, what can they do for the stuff that hasn't been addressed? Is there the ability to pay for custom development, things like that? And the reason I say this is a PMS always costs more to implement than you are quoted and you anticipate, and the loss of business during the time that you figure that out is also very large. So, unless your PMS is crumbling, which some of them are, I know quite a few PMSs that hit their daily database limits, and that causes res to go offline and things like that. Those you have to move. That's an emergency situation. But if your PMS is more of the common situation, which is, you constantly hear from your team that they dislike it, you need to understand in real terms what it is they dislike and what the actual business impact is, because that will also tell you how big of a problem is it, and how much is it worth spending to solve that problem?
Right, absolutely.
Two things. One is, as a follow-up question earlier from the PMS point of view, who plugs all this stuff in together? Is it the PMS people? Is it you? And second, Edward, great advice. Thank you. Going to talk to vendor now.
Yes, that's what we want out of this show, right?
I'm done. I'm George Costanza.
Dr. StOnge has spoken. That's it.
By the way, to the other one, who meshes this together? Do they rely on the PMS services? Who plugs the APIs and all this stuff together?
Please, whatever you do, do not rely on any one technology provider to assume that they know how they work with other technology providers. You've got to have an expert who understands how the interfaces work, or else you're going to have issues. You're going to lose money from day one when you go live and nothing's working. And you're not available online. This happens
And you're going to spend
way
a lot
more
of
often.
time defining because you will
Right.
be told that the way they're doing it is the way you asked, but you will quickly find out that the way you asked left a lot of room for defining what the answer is.
You need a translator, essentially. Somebody who knows the PMS you're selecting, the CRS you're using, the RMS you're using. They have to know all those technologies and how they interface. And that person should be the person project managing the entire thing from start to finish. The selection process is where it starts. That person has to be involved in the selection process, because the last thing you want to do is be 3 days from go live and realize half of your functions don't interface. And now you're in a manual environment. And it's happened. We've seen it happen before, and it is painful. So
It
make
still
sure
happens?
It still happens because I mean,
I did this 20 years ago, and I'm having horrible memories. I can't believe it's still the case.
It still happens. And where it comes down to is, I mean, I feel like a broken record on today's call, because they don't want to spend the money to bring in an expert who knows how to select the best system. And so they make a $30,000 investment and realize 2 weeks later, when they can't get their money back, that it wasn't the right system for them, or that it's not going to work properly for them, or they can't do 15 things that they were already doing in their old system. So really hiring an expert, and sure, we provide this service, but like, hire anyone who does this well, who has good reviews, who has success stories. It doesn't have to be us, although obviously we would love your business, but just spend the money, get somebody who knows what they're doing in there to manage the entire process for you, because it is going to save you months of heartache down the road.
And also understand that moving to a new core platform means you are going to change almost all of your standard operating procedures. You're not, the biggest mistake I watch people make who buy complex software is they want the software to work the way they've done things, where that is actually the wrong way to use software. The correct way to use software is to understand that for whatever function it is, what is the best way to approach having your team use it. Not make the software work the way your team works, because you have to remember your team currently works the way they do because of the software they've been using.
Exactly.
And it's a lot like tipping the first domino, right? You knock over that first one, and all of a sudden it starts running out. Another way that I've used in the past has really been to go and look at, first there needs to be an inventory of all of your interfaces, and even that, Holly, is a major obstacle for a lot of groups, because they don't really know, what's connected. Sometimes they're little, weird black boxes that were, who knows how long ago something was kludged together. And, Ed mentioned, custom development. Yeah, somebody did something custom. It worked really well, but is the guy who developed it still there? Nobody knows how it works. So all of a sudden, and then actually going around to all of those various groups and finding out, well, who are they working with? So you talk to your point of sale group or revenue manager. Hey, who's doing really great stuff? Who's a great partner that you're, really having, great interfaces with? And, it winds up being kind of a network approach to try to figure out, okay, well, if I move this part, I only break 2 things instead of 6. But I don't get this other thing that I really need. And between the operational processes, your reporting, what the management company needs, all these other factors, there may be constraints on not getting to the best, maybe quote the best solution for you. So,
and this is where
you
have to understand, especially in core systems, and it's not just the property management system industry. I mean, if any of you have ever walked a large company through changing an ERP, all you're doing is you're trading the things you dislike today for different things you'll dislike tomorrow. And if that trade equals, overall better business, then it's a good trade. If it doesn't, if it's neutral or worse, it can really cripple your organization moving forward and become very problematic. So this is an area, when you're talking about core elements of your technology stack, it is absolutely worth spending the money, and especially on someone who has done the specific move you're looking to move. So someone who has expertise in the technologies you have today and have moved other customers through the process of moving to the specific technologies you're looking to move to.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's an old adage: never be the first, never be the biggest.
Yeah.
You're just, I mean, it might work out for you, but boy, the odds are stacked against you.
From perspective of future, looking in the future tense of things and business models and so forth, do you see a trend if we do feel this downward turn, whether it be fast or slow? Do you feel that businesses are better suited to bring in more full-time teams to mitigate their revenue management ideologies, or do you feel like you are in the cat seat where it comes to I can come, I can fix, I can do what you need to do, put you on the right path, and then I don't have to be around the whole time? Is that, I mean, which model do you think is going to be more prudent or usable, I guess? I don't know, in the sense of what do you see the future in that sense?
I guess it depends if their revenue management teams are currently efficient, right? So if you're just adding more bodies because it seems like you can get more done, it may be an efficiency problem within the team. Honestly, I think that an assessment is the way to go because it'll cost maybe 10% of 1 month of revenue. Let's just put it in perspective, right? If I give you the dollar amount, it sounds expensive. But if it's less than 10% of 1 month's revenue to set you on the right path for a year, doesn't that make more sense than hiring somebody full time? Because these days, a decent revenue manager is commanding upwards of $80,000 to $100,000 in some markets like New York City and San Francisco, even more. Mm-hmm. So that's great if you bring on a great professional, and you should have a great professional on your team, whether they're a full-time employee or a service like ours. Either way, you just have to make sure that the quality level is there and not see revenue management as an area where you cut costs. It is where you want to look for efficiency, though, and results. If your revenue manager can't describe to you the whys behind what's happening in your market, or at least know where to look for the answers, you're probably working with the wrong revenue manager, whether that's a consultant, whether that's a on-property person, it doesn't really matter. If they can't give you a solid reason backed up by data, you're going to be in trouble when the recession hits.
Well, and you need to internalize that information so you learn as an organization, because Absolutely. Again, if it's an external consultant, that person gets hit by a bus, hey, how does all this stuff work? And they produced really good, but all of a sudden you've got nothing, and you're lost. Or even you start working with some larger firms, and the person who's your account manager, who's really working with you closely, who's great, hey, they just got promoted and they aren't that person anymore. And you know what? Because your property was so good, they're going to put some junior person in who's going to learn, and it's going to be a great experience for that. That may not be a great experience for you as a customer. So
right,
you've got to learn the stuff. You've got to absorb why this is happening, because it's your asset. It's your business. It's your just outsourcing your pricing and revenue strategies is probably not a successful plan that any successful business has ever adopted.
As it said in one of my favorite books, Fanatical Prospecting. If you've never listened to it and you run any sales teams, you should listen. You are the CEO of you. Mm-hmm. So you are ultimately responsible for your results. You've got to be exactly what Robert is saying, even if you're working with us, right? Like, I like to think my company is great, but you ultimately are responsible for what happens and how you involve yourself with that consulting firm or vendor or tech vendor, or really it comes across with anything. At the end of the day, it's your asset. Nobody's going to care about your asset exactly the same way that you do. So it is really important that you have that involvement. And also, if you are working with a vendor or consulting firm, know what your backup plan is in case your consultant does get hit by a bus. For us, we build that in because we always have a 3-tier system. We've got an analyst, a strategy lead, and a project manager assigned to every client, so that if somebody is, even if they're out sick for a day, there's somebody else who has access to the data and knows what's going on for your hotel and your strategy that can quickly jump in and take care of things for you.
Gentlemen from Morocco would like to know, who do you talk to most, the GMs or the ownership? And how does this process, I think you first mentioned was they don't have a person that does this. So if it has someone that does this, who do they talk to most? Do they talk to the GM or do they talk to the owners when it comes to these types of things?
Well, ideally, you want to have a revenue team. So whether or not you talk often with the owners is often at the discretion of the ownership itself and how involved they want to be. Some are on every weekly strategy meeting, and some really just want a quarterly report, and others just want to throw some money into the hotel and don't want to know what goes on behind the scenes. That's getting to be less and less these days, though. But usually you want to have a strategy team. So that should definitely be your GM. That's typically the direct report for the revenue manager. The director of sales should be involved. The marketing person should be involved if there is one, or any type of marketing service that you're employing. Front office manager is a plus because they bring that operational kind of perspective to everything if you can get them involved. And that's really going to be kind of your core team. Director of finance is also a plus because they can comment on kind of the profitability bottom line for the strategies that you're discussing, and working as a team, collaborating on what those strategies are going to be so everybody's on the same page and rolling things out in the same way.
How far ahead should you look?
12 months.
Okay.
We look at 12 months every single day. We don't necessarily go day by day, but we at least look at any major spikes in pickup or any major changes in market rates, because that may be an indicator of an event or some sort of demand generator that you weren't previously aware of. And when you're looking 12 months out, you have the opportunity to capitalize on that right away. And of course, with your pace, you should look 12 months out, because then you see in advance if things are falling behind as well. That may be less on a day-to-day basis, but that's going to alert you to any upcoming issues in your strategy.
Not that this is any indication that we want to stop the conversation, but for our Instagram feed, it lasts only an hour. So I want to make sure that we get into correct content information of how people can reach you and so forth. And then we can continue the conversation after that. But at least that will give us a stop point for the Instagram feed. So how is it they can find you, and anything you want to tell as to what it is that you do service structure-wise or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to kind of reiterate for those who may have joined us a little bit late, we are a full-service revenue management consulting firm. We focus on task force, so filling vacant positions, outsourcing revenue management on a long-term basis with a professional you might not have been able to afford on a full-time basis. And most importantly, our consulting services, the strategic assessment we've talked about ad nauseum here, our system audits. If your technology systems or interfaces aren't working, we can jump in and clean those up and solve that for you. System selection, we've talked a little bit about. That's another service that we offer as well. And everything that we do is customized to the needs of each of our clients. So if you let us know a little bit about your goals and your pain points, we can customize any program related to revenue management for you. So you can reach us by going to www.tcrmservices.com. That's our website. You can read a little bit more about what we do there in our services. You can also see some of the articles and thought pieces that we've published if you want to read a little bit more about these topics. And you can also reach us for any additional information at info@tcrmservices.com.
Outstanding. Like I said, we don't have to stop by any means. I just want to make sure we had a stopping point that I can make the Instagram.
Absolutely.
And remember,
just, in 20 more minutes, he will do another channel stopping point, and then 30 minutes after that, another.
And remember how we said that all these interrelated systems had to work so smoothly, and you needed an expert who knew how all this stuff worked. And if somebody, if they got hit by a bus. Well, if Lauren got hit by a bus, it would not be.
No one would use Webinar Jam.
No, nobody would use Webinar Jam. Yeah.
Well, that helps us with the Instagram TV, IGTV, and then later on we're going to have to do the LinkedIn sign out, and then we're all good. But they all have their time limits on different things. I don't want to make sure we didn't miss the contact information from it. Also, my apologies for the interruption on that. We are still, however, still on LinkedIn. And very interesting that people are up on these times. I mean, if you look at Sydney time, it is 3:30 in the morning that this is being broadcast with them, and in 6 hours plus so it's 6:30 Friday in London time in Morocco, and that's +1 for Morocco, so it's even 7:30. So nice that people are engaged in the conversations for those times by any stretch. 3:30 in the morning, though, I am really bizarre as to why they're up watching a live LinkedIn. But
Lauren,
the bars have just closed in Sydney, and you have to look at there are other alternatives for entertainment. Okay,
yeah, might be.
Insomnia is a rampant problem in our society that not enough people talk about.
I would think in Bali, though, I think in Bali you would have probably a restful, paradise, I don't know. But
globally, we are the #1 cure for insomnia. I mean, that is kind of our new tagline. So,
I got it. I mean, honestly, it's near and dear to my heart. Your business strategy of stepping in and helping people, bringing in very high quality resources that they couldn't afford themselves. Face it. I mean, like you pointed out with revenue manager, you get a good revenue manager, you're 6 figures. I mean, If you're really you get somebody good and knows the market well and is really going to make money for you. Not everybody can afford that, and then also even just convince people that they should even afford it. So coming in and be able to at least put them onto the path, fix what is broken, and connect the dots for them, and of course come in and talk about the integrations necessary between the disciplines of marketing, sales, and revenue management, where they're talking about the same data and using it. Holly, thank you for being here, because from a sales perspective, that seems to be a missing component a lot of times, is that dialogue.
I did have a question on that. So one of the big things I think about when you are reducing the silos within organizations, I heard you talking about marketing and revenue management. Sales often gets a little bit excluded, and an approach that I always take is you have to align the various department goals. And so from a revenue management goal, I'm a little bit amazed, again, going back 20 years, at the conflict that still perpetually arises between revenue management and sales. And so to alleviate that and to get them working on the same page, what do you recommend? What goals can you align to get them both focusing on the same revenue growth?
Well, first of all, your incentive plan for your salespeople, that's where a lot of this tends to start. If they're incentivized based on their personal bookings only and not the overall performance of the hotel, like from a RevPAR perspective, then it's going to be a lot harder for them to hear, no, we're not going to take this group that would put you over your goal for the quarter because it's not in the best interest of the hotel and we can make more money in transient. Yes,
I'm
but
sorry.
What does that mean for my pocketbook?
I don't want to hear what's wrong with sales. I want to hear what you change about revenue management.
Oh, you mean goals may not be
Because
you want me to stay in my silo.
I do.
Stay in your silo. Stay in your lane.
Actually, I'm of course kidding. However, when you said that, my immediate response was, you know what though? Salespeople need to be bonused on personal because that's how we're driven. But go ahead. I understand your point.
Well, I think it has to be weighted between multiple things. Yes, there's absolutely a personal goal still in there. There's a team goal in there. There's a hotel goal in there. So there's got to be a balance, I think, in that incentive program because, we don't want to be in the position of big bad revenue manager, right? Like we're not out to get Sally Hansen on her goal, and make sure that she can't feed her children. Like that's not why we're here. We're just here to make sure that the hotel is doing well so that we all have jobs later because the owners are happy with our performance. So I think that one thing that revenue managers, though, can also do better is, and we talk about this a lot when it comes to the DBR process, is revenue managers might start to focus on profitability, which is good. And this is a big piece of it where they'll say, what's your net rate of your group business? Give me, what you're actually quoting, minus the commissions, minus the margins, plus the ancillary spend, like minus the rebates. But are they doing the same thing in transient? Probably not. They're probably comparing it against bar or ADR, one of those two things. So what they really need to be looking at is their average transient net rate after commissions, after booking fees and all of that. And that is seldom being done. So that's, I think, where sales can push back a little bit and say, okay, you're saying my net rate's too low, but we're off by about $20. Are you sure that you've looked at the cost of acquisition for the transient that you think is going to fill this void instead, and the relationship piece that comes along with that piece of group?
Yes, thank you.
See, I can be in my silo too.
Totally. No, that's exactly.
Just purely pushing book direct isn't the right way to do it. Huh. Who would have
I
thought?
know. Oh my gosh.
I wonder if they talked about that at that conference this week.
The book direct conference? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, don't get me started on how hospitality is just a bunch of bandwagons that we all jump on from time to time. Like everybody's doing it, so it must be the right thing to do.
You're ready to hop on a wagon.
Well, yeah,
life,
but
life in general.
Bandwagons. It's bandwagons, but do you ever, like the demolition derby where the cars are running in the figure 8 pattern and crossing? It's a little bit more like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
No,
and by the way, for everyone listening, that point of your direct channel may be costing more than your OTA, like that happens quite a few times a year. Your job is to make that happen as few times a year as possible, and identify the times a year that your OTA business can drive a more effective demand on a lower cost than your direct channel, and adjust your marketing to not overspend on those times, and you'll make even more money.
Yeah.
And you'll drop the cost of your direct channel.
And that's what the OTAs are doing with their bidding strategies across metasearch, across their display, across everything, is they're looking at where the opportunities are, so they aren't throwing a bunch of good money after bad opportunities.
So I do think this is funny. That wasn't her only point about direct booking.
Oh, no, it was an earlier point she made that we didn't, because she was in the middle of talking through a very large thing. I didn't want to go, hey, stop what's important to you. You said something I want to say something about. She's too new to do that yet.
No, but I think also, I'm just going to call out almost every hospitality operator here for a moment on your point, Edward. So a little while ago, I was talking about a client who said that they may stop using Demand 360 because their team wasn't using it, so they were going to cut it out of the budget. And my suggestion was maybe your team should start using it. But really, that's what it comes down to as well when we're looking at things like OTAs, right? Because everybody says, okay, the OTA can be your billboard. It's going to bring guests to you, and you can convert them. And I hear so often, yeah, but my front desk doesn't do a good job of that. Then make them do a good job of it. That's your job as a hospitality owner, is to get your people to perform or kick them out. Like, you've got to get these people on board. The solution is not, oh, my team isn't performing, so I'm going to spend more money on something else or less money on something that could be making me more money. The answer is have the tough conversations, take the time to do the training, and make it work for you. OTAs are not this devil. They're like a distribution channel. I mean, that's exactly what they're called, right? And saying that you want everybody to book direct is like the farmer saying they're not going to sell their produce at Walmart. They want everybody to travel to their farm to get it. It is not going to happen with the majority of your customers. It's just not.
Although they don't want their process, because maybe they're booking air or something first, and it's right there, and they're saying, oh, I can save $200 on my hotel stay or whatever if I book it as a bundle, whatever's happening in terms of that process. And what's the alternative? Well, they aren't really beholden, or maybe they're a member of the Hilton program, the Marriott program, the Hyatt program, all the way down the list. So they have to go to each of those sites independently because metasearch doesn't work. right? Because they don't have the best rates, and that's a gruesome process for them. So they do what's easiest and in their best interest. They can save some money.
To counter it, it's about balance, because you can't also give up on your direct channel, because then you will
absolutely.
So the OTAs aren't evil; they will push as far as you allow them to push.
Absolutely.
So if you aggressively are pushed up against them, they're not going to gain much traction on you. The only way you can push up aggressively against them come negotiation time is to have viable other sources of business. So it's about channel mix. You need your direct channel to be healthy, to be a good representative of your business. And I say that because that's not about style. It's about serving the purpose that it exists. So, if your site has the new thing is, everyone's gone nuts with these giant hero videos that take forever to load, because they haven't implemented them correctly. So, that's an example of, style over, purpose. Your direct channel should be healthy. It should have the same advantages that if someone finds you on your direct channel, when they go to Expedia, you're not cheaper on Expedia. It should all be about balance, and no one channel's the devil. Your direct channel's not the devil. That may come, because we are a bandwagon industry, like you said. Someone may win the war to get the chance of direct channels garbage.
Obviously, the OTA discussion has spurred some questions. We answered two of them, which was, what is, how do you combat or work with the mix of OTA? But there's one that is more specific in saying, what do you consider to be proper mix? How much OTA, how much direct? What is in your mind the percentages that should be comparable?
It's heavily dependent on time of year, your market,
exactly.
The cost of customer acquisition.
I know it's a general question, but it's
but that's there is no answer to that everyone who watches this can walk away.
What's a healthy percentage of OTA?
But there may be a particular hotel where honestly, and Lily mentioned it earlier, when you start considering the whole load of franchise fees and everything, and kudos for drilling through that. It may be, and there have been small independent hotels in New York who just decide, you know what, we're going 100% OTA. These guys can fill us. We're going to work with them, and let's go. We're just going to cash the checks. Now, that may not be the best.
Not a good long-term strategy.
Probably not a great but again, for that owner of that building who may be able to say, here's what I'm doing, and you know what, it's going to be sold within the next 36 months anyway. Here we go.
Probably,
who knows?
Probably the person was asking Lily, since this is what she does full time. What's your response, Lily?
We're all here. Lily, what do you think?
Well, number one, you have to know how much demand there is for each channel in your market. To Edward's point, I mean, he's absolutely correct. You have to know how your market behaves. Some are going to be more heavily OTA versus others. Also, your brand or your style of hotel, and by brand here, I mean not specifically Marriott, Hilton, etc., but in conjunction, being an independent is its own brand in a way. So from other similar hotels within your market, what is their demand level of OTA and direct? Because you can only capitalize on as much business as there is in the market, right? If there's only 500 rooms of people who are booking direct in your market, sorry, I have a fly in my office for some reason. If there's only 500 direct bookers, you're not necessarily going to increase the number of direct bookers unless you have a really solid marketing strategy. So you have to work with the demand that's there and just capture as much of that share as possible. But setting a 5,000 direct booking strategy in a market that only has 500 is not going to work for you. You can't just make every customer change their behavior. So that's number one. And number two is, who's your target demographic and how do you reach them?
Right. I actually have a question. Sorry, guys. Do you, when you look at your budgeting, because we're in the budget process still, regardless, it's October, we have the season. Do you look at your historical contribution percentages as a point of truth, or do you try to challenge those contributions in your future budget forecasting, saying, you know what, I know OTA is very heavy for us at this time, but business cycle wise, that's our season, so they step into the market, they dominate it, so we just really, will shift over to them because they're driving the business for us? It's too expensive for us to try to move that off? Or do you say, let's try this, let's see if we can shift this? Do you challenge the future, or do you just rely on the historical channel segmentations, kind of like that's the way it is?
Well, if you're ever working with a revenue manager who doesn't challenge the future, switch now. But first of all, you want to look in at your future demand. And again, I go market first, not property. So if you're making all of your decisions on your hotel's historical data or your hotel's future data, you're probably leaving money on the table somewhere. You have to know.
Data.
It is. You've really got to know. And it could be based on you doing a really crappy job or you doing a really excellent job, and either one can lead you to inaccurate assumptions. And that's one of the biggest problems I see today, is so many hoteliers making assumptions on bad data. And it turns out when you do that, your results aren't going to work out, because if you think you're competing against the Courtyard, and in reality you're competing against the Ritz-Carlton, then you've got a problem. You're going to be making assumptions based on competing against the Courtyard that aren't going to follow through in your strategy. Everything's going to fall flat, and you're back to square one, if not square -50. So you've really got to be clear on what's going on in your market. Historical is a piece of that, but you also have to look at kind of your pace and your multiplier to see where it's going, because I'm finding that the pace of the way that the markets are changing and the way that people travel is changing is so fast that historical data from a year ago may be wholly inaccurate to what's happening with your market right now.
So the key is to have good data, number
It
one.
is.
Before you start making any of these crazy
Right.
changes and things like that. And
Yeah.
because without that you'll make maybe, well, they aren't well-informed decisions, but you've gone through some sort of process which has produced a decision, and you may be answering completely the wrong question because you don't have the right data to provide it for you. So.
To take advantage of the unique fact that we have Holly with us in addition, and not that you are
Really?
just only in sales, but the sales is your focus at this time, and that we have Lily, who is revenue. This is as you said,
fight.
This is a unique opportunity to show.
Let's just roll up our sleeves and watch out.
to talk about the collaboration of what you would like, both of you, from your perspectives, to see in the integration. Because to your point, Holly, and it is a dormant conversation, sales usually gets invited last, if at all, into the conversations. And yet by the same token, as you pointed out, Lily, it's a very integrated part as to what the value proposition of the balance of resources and revenue potentials are. So great advice point, because I mean, some of the things pops up is the talking about sales and revenue management is how can we, what kind of dialogue can we have? With both of you here, it makes it kind of interesting we can do that.
And the lead time of the segment is also critical.
Yeah.
So I do have a question that's a little bit targeted, and this is, I think, sort of funny. I am certainly in the sales world and very much in the e-commerce marketing world, not at all in the revenue management world, honestly, because I'm a salesperson and I immediately don't like revenue management, which I know is ridiculous.
She doesn't like accounting, either legal. Yeah, any of them.
I don't like any of them. But my question for you, so I'm embarrassed that I don't know the answer to this. Revenue managers, first of all, are they incentivized? And if they are or not, how? But if they're not incentivized, how are they measured? How do you know you have a revenue manager who does a good job?
Excellent question.
That is a good question.
Thank you, Robert.
I'm so relieved, Holly, because when you said you were embarrassed you didn't know it, I thought you were going to ask what RevPAR was, and I just was going to be really worried.
No.
So,
what is this ADR thing?
ADR. So, no, that's a great question, actually, and it varies a lot by different companies and kind of the approach that they take. I will say that most companies are bonusing revenue managers now. But there's not a lot of consistency. Yeah, there's not a lot of consistency on what they bonus on. But I can tell you a couple of key factors that are often in there, which are RevPAR index performance and growth, forecasting accuracy. So when you forecast for the upcoming 30 days, are you within plus or minus 3% is usually the goal. Some do 5%, but somewhere in there. And the overall revenue performance of the hotel from a dollars perspective are probably the top three that we see.
So that's what they are. What should they be? The revenue index change, I would imagine, would always make sense. The overall revenue, to your point, should maybe be tweaked to profitability.
Yes,
I
exactly.
mean, that would
So
be a big
Channel
I could pretty much,
profitability.
like, the answer's always C, or in my case, profitability. Like, pretty much every answer to every question on here, I could just say profitability, and you'd pretty much get my opinion on it. But I think that that's so important, and people just aren't taking the time to dig into those metrics the way that they should, which is where we're hoping that our study will help people. Like, let me at least do it for you one time so you can see that it can be done. Now you know where to find the reports. Now you know how to move your property forward. But it is true that revenue managers are very time poor, so I digress. But when it comes to what you're bonused on, I think they're not far off. These metrics still make sense, I think, for revenue managers. The beauty of using index as a portion of the bonus is that in the case of a recession, which frankly is not the revenue manager's fault, you're still bonusing them on capturing share, not on whether or not the hotel's losing money year over year. Because guess what? You are going to lose money year over year. And there's not much that the revenue manager can do about that other than control how much money you lose in comparison to your competitive set.
Thank you.
Oh, and Holly, because you've
agree.
never been in revenue management, she's holding back. There's a special bonus that all revenue managers get for denying group sales.
Sales.
Yeah. There's the secret. I didn't have
The
to give it
same
to
one.
sales book.
There's a similar one for banquets and catering
man.
to make sure they lock.
Oh yeah,
the
food and
meeting
beverage
space so that-
denials. Yeah.
Exactly.
That is, I can neither confirm nor deny the existence of this bonus program.
So what I think is really funny is, I mean, and this is astounding to me. Why is this the case? What you're saying, and I completely agree. If we could align sales, marketing, and revenue managers' measurement with hotel profitability,
Yeah,
we're all on the same page,
right.
and the owners win. Why are we just getting around to that now? I mean, why?
Data, consistent
It's
data.
technology, not
Clean
talking to
data.
each
What's the
other.
meaning of life, Holly? What's the meaning of life?
I mean,
Well, Holly, why did it take us so long to figure out that in hotels we might want to have a comfortable bed?
They figured that out,
Yeah.
like industry-wide.
Again,
I don't know.
yeah. Lily just.
I mean,
quick-
Starwood figured that out.
Right.
No, but it's funny, and the industry forgot about. I mean, Starwood figured that out in what 2003, maybe something like that. But yeah, the work that I'm doing with JD Power, one of the things that they came up with was quality of sleep. Did you have a better quality of sleep than you expected? Right.
Right.
And
But
and it's horrible, which should be kind of the whole objective of staying in the hotel. Did you sleep well? Where you come should be kind of the outcome everyone's
you
looking
gave
for.
that less weight than lobby, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. And we figured out the best way is really to have a picture of an empty lobby with no humans, normally at night, dramatically lit. That's really the best way to attract a customer.
Oh yeah, best picture ever.
Thank
Oh
you.
no, porte cochere.
Well, the porte cochere
Porte-cochere.
really, I mean, is the all-time winner.
My
So-
favorite is the one property that had a picture of the corner of the ceiling.
Oh, oops! Little cropping error, or
No, just like it was almost like they accidentally took the photo and then made it their main photo on the OTA. I don't even know what happened there. It was not one of our hotels, but that was interesting. I didn't even know what to make of that one. I tried to resize it
There's
like
a
5
niche- there's
times.
a
I
niche
figured it was on
market.
my end.
maybe somebody
Holly,
likes them. Yeah, so-
one other thing, since we rarely get you, I would like to point out how you're wrong.
Perfect. Let's go. Roll
so-
up the sleeves again.
It's what I live
You made a
for.
comment
That's right.
that you feel like that you're not good or you're uncomfortable with revenue management. However, in the same sentence, you said that you are proficient in e-commerce. It's the same part of the brain. revenue management and e-commerce are data-driven sciences.
Absolutely.
So you actually would probably find that if you moved your day into the shoes of a revenue manager, you would find that you would lean on a lot of what you have developed in your e-commerce expertise.
Absolutely. I mean, I love data. I know, which is, I know, a little bit weird for a salesperson. You know that I do. I just really have not, I've been busy, and so I've been focusing on the other two areas, and I just don't pay as much attention. I go to Rock every year. I go to the things, I listen, but my issue always with revenue management, I'd be curious, Lily, to hear your read on this. My point has always been revenue management does not generate demand. They manage demand, but they don't generate demand. Would you agree?
In many cases, yes. So we may generate demand in a way of speaking by pricing appropriately, but it's really more that we're generating shift in share, not necessarily like true demand. We're just pulling share, right? So here's what I really think. Like, we talk about breaking down the silos and working together, and we've talked about it and talked about it and talked about it, and still having trouble getting people to do it. But when people want to know what is the future of revenue management, I say it's that we're not going to have a revenue management department, we're not going to have a sales department, and we're not going to have a marketing department. We're going to have a chief strategist, a chief analytics person, and those two will oversee all three. So your analytics person is your data nerd. They're managing all your dashboards and making sure the strategist has accurate data. The strategist is focused on a holistic view, and they understand marketing strategy. They understand sales strategy, and they understand revenue strategy, which sadly, there are not very many true strategists left out there. There's just people who kind of, throw the spaghetti at the wall, see if it sticks. Is it done yet? And then, marketing might be your creative person that's going to design a pretty flyer, right? So, or a gorgeous website. And you've got to have that mind kind of over here supporting the strategist and analyst. But honestly, I think that that's the wave of the future.
100% agree.
And you need quality salespeople who can go nurture relationships and things. And yes, you need to be able to do that digitally, but you also probably need to have someone who's doing that very effectively and you
have to understand that it's even between marketing and sales, it's two very different goals. And you're speaking at two very different levels. Marketing is sell the why, the vision, the big, and sales is help through the small. Help through the detail and, really make them feel comfortable. And that's where the relationship side comes in. And, I would say on your next row down, I agree with you on the top people who oversee it. The next row down, your sales is going to be more of your relationship interface, and your marketing is going to be your creative. So it'll be a creative manager or a creative associate. And your sales will be more of your interface to the world. It's because you don't need, in your architecture, you don't need what currently is defined as a salesperson in that architecture. Because today, and here's the problem on why silos exist, Holly. Revenue management started at a different time than sales did, and the current form of marketing started at a different time than either of the two. So a salesperson who came up and has been trained by salespeople who existed before revenue management and before marketing was, an active digital landscape, the salesperson had those skill sets as part of their overarching skill. Those people trained their people, and that the definition of what a salesperson thinks their role should be doesn't fit what that new structure is. That does not mean a salesperson can't take and reflect on the fact that you actually do make revenue type decisions daily. You are using data. You're just not paying attention to the fact that you're taking that input, and that input is data, and you're making decisions on it. You have the ability to be a strategist. You have the ability to be an analyst. And so this is where some of that friction has come up. Is a salesperson didn't get redefined when a revenue manager started. And neither got redefined when digital
marketing
came in. And has capabilities that overlap the both. And because of that, you have people who possess a lot of the same capabilities put in these silos so that they don't butt heads and ask the hard questions and derail things, and it just grows further and further apart. As you go to bring it together, people's skill sets need to change to make that work.
Exactly.
And it can work, and it does not mean any is more or less valuable. They're actually all intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
I agree, oddly enough, with Ed.
You often agree with me, Holly.
What day is this?
Not out loud.
She's afraid
We're
not
just
to.
listen to Stone Tablet somewhere.
You know what it is Lauren told me people are actually watching now, so I can't just joke around anymore.
Oh, that's it.
Anyway,
But just think of just an example there, though. Think of next year. They're going to have the Democratic National Convention in Milwaukee in July, which is a pretty strong demand period for that. I mean, their hotels there are going to be having. Well, they've already made decisions when, prior to the destination being announced. Were they going to take a huge block from the DNC? Were they going to try to make that as small as possible because they know the demand? They're going to pull all that in as. Who knows? A lot of these guys may have come in and just go, oh, yeah, we'll do that. What do you want? Yeah, sure. Oh, you want all the rooms? Okay. And all of a sudden that kills their profitability for it, right? Mm-hmm. So, those decisions have always been, a major factor of how these, especially when it has a long lead time, you're setting that base of business. All of a sudden that can cripple the hotel if that data isn't being handled. But again, in sales, you have sales analysts and everything who are doing that. They're trying to meet their budget. They have revenue goals. They're trying to do it. The problem is you don't have that pitted against the other channel. And as Lily said, you've got to look at all this channel profitability and then the whole net of what's happening with management fees and overrides and incentives and things like that. You've got to look at it holistically.
Yeah.
Or you can't be optimized.
With that in mind, we are at the top of the hour, and I do want to make sure as we conclude with the LinkedIn feed line that we go over and get Lily's information back out again, so we can wrap that as a key point for it. And then we want to get Lily, like I told you, in a blink of an eye, a half hour turns into an hour turns into an hour.
I'm telling you, yeah.
Seems like this half hour really seems more like an hour and a half.
I'm having so much fun. I could do this all day.
That's why we end up doing this. This is our therapy every Friday.
We do this for us.
Yeah. We apologize to the listeners and the people watching. Yeah,
so Lily, if people want to know more about what it is that you do in your company that you've built and so forth, what is it that you do and where is it that they can find you?
Sure, I'm the CEO of Total Customized Revenue Management, also known as TCRM, and you can find us at www.tcrmservices.com. We do task force, outsourced revenue management, and key consulting services such as strategic assessments to set you on the right path for the next year, system audits to make sure that your systems and technology are working properly and are set up cleanly, and also technology selection processes for those who are looking for new PMS, CRS, RMS, or BI tools that are going to be a great investment for you in the long term. So you can find out more about our services online and also the articles and whatnot that we've produced on different subjects.
And Holly, somebody says, who's Holly?
Who are they? Where are they located?
Holly, would you be so kind?
Who's asking?
While we're asking, Holly, what is it that you do?
I own a sales training company called Influencer Sales. And I have spent the last couple of years working on the CHDM with HSMAI, hence my involvement with this group. I think that's probably how I came to be with you people, because I'm not one of you. Although, where's my friend Stuart?
Stuart Bale.
Wait. Wait.
You don't know us, but you're only friends with Stuart.
What?
Oh, now, okay.
Wow.
Voting
now
buddy.
things are coming clear. Okay.
Always going for the Australian.
You guys.
Yep.
You guys were. I used to say you guys were much more nerdy than me, but I can't actually say that anymore. It's just not true.
You're another level.
Oh, yeah.
So we're at a point where we can either continue, obviously, with the conversation, which has been outstanding, or we can throw in a few of these topics that Robert was so generous in throwing into a list that we have yet to even touch.
As usual.
But this is relatively normal.
But also, Robert,
Yeah, the list.
It's kind of like, oh yeah, there's this list thing. We'll put it up on the website. I'll leave it at that. But there was some really good articles too. And I don't know, Lily, it's up to you. What would you like to talk about?
Let's throw in some articles. I'm good with that. There's some really great topics in there.
Hey, actually, can we talk about Hilton first? Which I think ties into the revenue management thing, because their third quarter performance, they've got their fourth quarter, guidance is down and that sort of thing. Very interesting when you look at the overall performance of their company in the U.S. That for the third quarter, they wound up occupancy was up just for the quarter 0.3%, and ADR was flat. So they basically, RevPAR was up, 0.4% based on rounding. When you look at the industry as a whole, those numbers are radically lagging the overall industry, because at least from my stats for quarter to date, actually, no, not on occupancy. I take that back. On occupancy, they were ahead. Hilton seems to have been taking, at least over the past 9 months, more of a push occupancy at the detriment of rate versus what they were doing last year, which was really more pushing rate, and occupancy was lagging the industry. So I don't know if that's I haven't gotten deep enough into it to know if that's like a shift or if that's really a direction. Yeah.
Well, Oyo's doing the same thing. I mean, in the sense that they're irritating the heck out of people, because in their markets they're dropping rate during peak demand periods for occupancy preference.
Right, but
what you do when you're a new brand, when you're a new entrant to a market, you need to steal market share.
But I mean,
and Hilton, Oyo doesn't have anybody below them, though. That's the thing.
Hilton could be strategically doing this. There's big wars happening, and those big wars aren't just brands versus other OTA things like that. It's also brands versus brands.
Oh yeah.
And Hilton, if they really want to put some kinks in the armor of Marriott, one way to do that is to perform on the street better in overall key metrics. And I'm sure if you asked any hotel owner, holding occupancy and being flat on rate means year over year you're about the same. That is much better than having occupancy down and rate flat, or rate slightly up and occupancy down, because that means you actually, chances are, you made less money. So it could be Hilton is taking an early shot at trying to win the brand war on the street.
And I believe so. And their shares are up 33% year to date. Right.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Street seems to be rewarding them for it. But I think that's a very interesting point. And I didn't really see it earlier in their quarterly earnings. But boy, third quarter, you start looking at it going, I see a pattern here. So yeah, they've pivoted a little bit. So it's interesting. So I don't know if their direction to their revenue managers is being more of, okay, what do we do to push occupancy on this stuff and make sure that it goes, and yes, get the best rates you can, and certainly don't leave a ton of money on the table, but let's make sure we get this objective handled.
I mean, I'll tell you, I know the leaders of Hilton's revenue management practice. They're some of the sharpest, holistic revenue people I know. From a senior leadership perspective, that are well practiced, and I'm really thinking of like 3 people that kind of lead that ship in the Americas. So it wouldn't be surprising to me if this was a concerted effort, not just the market happening to them.
Well, and their CMO Kellen is completely data driven on this stuff, and very net profit driven. That's been her entire background. So.
But I think technology may be playing a piece too, because if you look at the waves of them rolling out Grow as their RMS system, the main kind of drawback to any RMS system is that when not properly managed, the system's going to favor occupancy.
Oh, that's actually a good point.
Yeah, very good point.
So because honestly, we've got some really great revenue management people, right, in leadership at Hilton, but there's not clear guidance necessarily to the revenue managers coming from the brand unless you're in an own and managed kind of a setting. Really, that guidance is mostly coming from the franchise companies, and they're just providing different tools and initiatives to help you reach your own goals. So I don't know that Hilton is completely in control of this, other than with the rollout of Grow, I feel like they could be having an impact because they're rolling it out brand by brand.
Did they start select service first and work their way up?
Yep, they're working their way up.
I would agree with you that could be that, because I mean, let us not forget that the volume of Hilton and the volume of any of these brands is select service.
Right.
And then, talking to, if you roll up Hilton select service, which is heavily their franchise business,
right.
And then you match with that managed, which is heavily their big, well-known Hiltons and Waldorfs and things like that. If you took those two and got them on the same page, it would give the appearance that the entire org was headed in that direction, because you'd have the pricing, behemoths like New York Midtown and Hawaiian Village and stuff like that, matched with the Hampton, Hilton Garden Inn volume across, the markets. That's interesting. Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah, both Hilton Garden Inn in the quarter. Hilton Garden Inn was negative 0.7% revenue growth. Hampton was negative 0.3%. Both of them had 0.4% occupancy growth. So both within that kind of they're flat, but it is certainly skewing toward occupancy for those guys. Waldorf is flat on occupancy and up 3.7% on ADR. So the luxury brand is still plugging away.
But no, I think we have such an influx of mid-scale properties right now, right? They're cash cows really for owners because they require very little staffing compared to a full-service hotel, and they just churn out the business because they're convenient. People like them. People want to stay at them. But it's a shame that in these environments, they're spending so little on revenue management. I have been asked the question probably 5 times a week this year, why can't you match the pricing of the brand's revenue management center with your service? I'm like, well, because my revenue managers are paid way too much money, and that would put us in the hole. Like, as a business, we can't do that, because we're focused on the quality, and the brand revenue centers are great for hotels that, have pretty consistency. Your suburban, your roadside hotels, all of these are good targets probably for brand revenue management because there's not a lot of fluctuation in their markets. But when you're looking at a cash cow, you've got to invest a little bit more and look further out than 90 days and spend more than 2 hours a week on revenue management, which is all they really give their revenue managers time for because of the size of their portfolios. So when we come in, we will not contract anything less than 7 hours for a limited service hotel because we don't feel that we can move the needle in less than 7 hours because it takes that long to implement a strategy that's more than just let's change some bar rates in the next 30 days.
I'm the evil person on the other side of that because it is taking candy from a baby when I want to take market segment from those people because they're so sluggish, if even aware of what they're in the market space of.
Right.
And it's so easy.
But that's indicative of who owns the asset. I mean, you call that asset, under investing in that, but that's because most of the people who buy that asset and why they're drawn to that asset is, yes, its ceiling is lower, but its floor is substantially higher, which makes it a great buy for a real estate investment trust because it does not require the efforts of an MVP employee to have it perform consistently and well. And so there's always that type of opportunity that creates is like you said, Lauren, you can look, and if you're competing with that type of owner on that type of property, your ceiling is going to be substantially higher. But don't forget, your floor is way lower. If you get hit by a bus or you're wrong on some of the things you're doing, you actually can tank the whole year's performance being wrong enough. So sure, certain weeks, certain days, certain months, you may completely mop the floor with that product because you took advantage of their sluggishness. But at the end of the year, the turtle won the race.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll still exist. I'm not killing their business. I'm
just know who you are.
Yeah.
Right.
and what you have to work with.
Right.
Yeah.
But from Lauren's perspective, if you go, 5 or 6 competitors where you've targeted it by channel and you go, you know what, I can pluck this here and that there, and I'm going to take a little bit. That's what you do. Right. And you're great. They don't really notice, maybe, because they're looking at it. They're looking at the bottom line of just flat out RevPAR and nothing else. Right. And that's their metric. They're going home and getting their bonuses on. So
because they're investing on a 30-year arc.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and then the other ones that are easy to poach from are those that believe that, build it and they will come. Brand is everything. I have nothing to worry about. And I can walk into their door and take people out of their lobby any day of the week too. And I'm not saying it from a cocky perspective. I'm just saying from a marketing perspective that they go on this straight line path. They don't veer. They don't adapt to what's going on. They just march forward knowing that this is what they're supposed to do. They leave it to that. And so the support from brand is these are the number of keywords they're optimizing for. This is the context that they're putting it on. This is the standardization of their marketing. And you just walk around and cut between the corners and say, I'll take this part out. I'll take this part out.
Yeah, but Lauren, when you hack their Google, their Google for Business,
okay,
listing,
that was a little far this time.
And put the driving directions to your door instead of theirs. When you
they didn't
use your social media strategy to put up the health department, complaints and things like that.
I mean, they should have bought the domain myhotel-com. They didn't buy it. Who was going to use it? It was just sitting there.
No. It's active reputation management, just not your reputation.
What's that? Beg for forgiveness without permission. I don't know, whatever that term is.
Yeah. Hey, the health department's letting us reopen. We're running a special.
Wow, this feels more like the regular show. I guess LinkedIn must have shut off, huh?
Yeah. So what other great topic? We have a few more minutes left. What other great topic we don't want to miss?
You guys pick the topics. That's fine. I write a laundry list. So
I only read the Rut-Rows.
Well, yeah, but we have to do those last. That's why you'll find people hang in through 2 hours of the show just to see what the Rut-Row is going to be. It's a whole, strategy we have. Yeah.
There you go. You got to keep that hook there at the end.
Yeah, right.
For sure.
Hopefully, something interesting will happen at some point. We'll wait to see if it happens at the end.
Well, I was reading through the articles, and I really did find one thing interesting when we were talking about the global top brands, right? Where you've got Google, Amazon, and whatnot. So, I just want to read this quote to you real quick from this article.
Which article was it?
This is the one on brands, the global leading brands. I think it's your first article on the list.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yep.
He doesn't read his articles. He just posts them.
He just posts them.
I
think somebody referenced the pretty pictures on one of the shows. Yeah, I get it. No, but the world's most successful brands are those that have placed customer centricity and digital transformation at the heart of their strategy and innovation. Companies that invest in platforms to deliver this will be those that win in the future. Does anybody else think this sounds like hospitality, and yet there's no hospitality companies on this list?
Well, you know why, though? Because all the big ones who would have enough scale to be that no longer are in the hospitality business. They all moved away to become franchises.
And what a shame.
You used to have Marriott, Hilton, when they owned all their assets and they were hoteliers first in their decision making, they would have stood a chance of being up on this, but it no longer aligns with the business goal. The business goal is minimum viable effort and spend to sell franchises.
Yeah. Right. It's just a shame to me that, the very definition of hospitality, it feels like, has gone out the window in many cases in what we're doing, what the brands are doing. And so that just really stood out to me as a little stab in the heart this morning.
It creates a vacuum, though, it creates a vacuum that will get filled.
Yeah.
We will see this phase of our industry is where we will see the resurgence of hospitality among some level of the industry, and it will.
We have an Airbnb, and we've already seen it.
Fair enough.
Come in and take our lunch.
Well, no, the hostel space. A lot of those groups are doing amazing stuff. Some small boutique, they call them boutique. There's an article on what's a boutique, but the ones that are very small and guest centric, the guys like Graduate Hotels, things like that.
The innkeeper mentality.
Absolutely.
VRBOs, things like
that. And the term I've coined for it is you've got hospitality and you've got hostitality, which is kind of the hostile guest attitudes, which are like resort.
I've not heard that.
Things like that.
Robert made it.
I made it.
That's a good one.
You mentioned it on last week's show.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, Holly, I thought you were watching.
I must have gone to the restroom.
violently throwing up after hearing.
Okay, I have to interrupt while we're on the topic of new words that should be in hospitality's vocabulary. Just this morning, one of my analysts came up with operancy, which came from, yes. So I was shopping on Hotwire to try and get some information about a market, right? And I realized that when you're going into these secret opaque hotels, they're saying it's going to be, for sure, like we can't tell you what hotel it is, but for sure it's going to be one of these three very specific names. One of these three hotels, and you can link to their profile if you want to take a look. Then it says, show me a picture of this hotel. They say, we can't tell you the name of this hotel, but here's a photo of their guest room.
Right.
I'm sorry, but when you narrow it down to three, I'm going to figure out what hotel that is before I.
No. You don't even have to go that far because they have the TripAdvisor, and this is my wheelhouse. Okay. So they show you the trip, but now they are showing for not all of them, and I'll make a point at the end, but they're showing the number of TripAdvisor reviews. So when you have the blended list of the opaque properties with the others, you go, I'll have the one with the 4,218 reviews that looks like it's $30 a night less. Yeah, I think that's it, because they can't get around that. And I've spoken with a particular individual and that they are experimenting all over it. And it comes down to a point is what is in these OTA agreements, right?
Right.
Of the level of opacity, but it also comes into Expedia's getting very aggressive on using packaged rates in sequential purchases, right? So you bought the air, and then a week later, you're eligible to get a deal on the hotel. Well, all they're doing is using the package rate. So there's this big, 20-point, 25-point, margin opportunity, because again, they're absorbing all of that. What the hotel thinks is going to translate to consumer benefit, it is translating into intermediary margin. Right? Because the agreement is not well written, and still a lot of the major brands aren't prohibiting that, and none of the major brands are aware of what Hotwire was doing. They've been doing it for at least 4 or 5 months.
Exactly, and they're not going to give you an alert.
Before it was even that, you have to remember the marker that did it was the Hotwire star rating. So I mean, 9 years ago was the first time I discovered that. And I went, because I was going to Rome. And even though we had quite a few customers in that market, none of them, the market was hot at that time. None of them, had anything that I could take as an acceptable rate. The lowest I could get was €190 a night. And this was at a time the euro was substantially stronger against the US dollar. I went on Hotwire because I was desperate. And I was like, wait a sec. You can say star level that you'll bid on. So I just pulled their non-opaque business, looked in the neighborhoods, what star levels they had, and then went on the opaque bidding site and just did a bargain basement bid for a 4-diamond. I ended up getting the Intercontinental at the top of the Spanish Steps for $99 a night through the opaque site. And then from that point forward, I was like, well, that's the jam. You don't even have to know the star rating. You just need to know how it translates on Hotwire. And is there an acceptable hotel in that star rating that I'll take for saving money? And then they'll match me if one takes it. And so I've done that to quite a few, but it's big group houses that fall victim to it because they end up using the opaque heavily discounted to shield group requirements, so they can't put it out on live. But they need to fill the rooms. So it's always, every time I've been able to take advantage of it, it's against a branded large group house.
Yep.
Yeah.
That, however, is a fabulous term.
Oh, parents.
Parents.
Yeah, my new favorite
Yeah,
word.
I love
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, Lily Stephanie Smith goes woo woo on LinkedIn.
Hey, Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie.
Stephanie Smith had a beautiful article that just came out this morning, by the way, in the HSMAI Insights newsletter. So you should check it out.
Oh.
Will do.
All right. Well, we have time for the Rut Rose and then closing statement, because I went over. I cheated. I went over and kicked us back on live on LinkedIn after it ran expired out. I dropped this back in just because I could.
Tricky.
Chapter 2.
New toy. Got to use
Tricky.
it. So anyway, nobody's chimed in on anything yet. That's why I was just checking on to make sure. But Stephanie popped in and said woohoo. So anyway, so let's do the Rut Rose and then we'll make sure that we close.
We had 2 Rut Rows this week because I just couldn't decide on which one, but I think they're also a little bit similar.
A little bit.
Yeah. Well, the first one is you're very easy to track down even when your data has been anonymized. And there's a nice little tool in this article from Technology Review, which basically says, you put in a little bit of information and, look.
What were you?
What? What were you? What were you?
67%. I'm not very unique.
I was 65 actually, which was good. I was kind of relieved.
Yeah, I was too. But then I was offended.
Oh no, I was not offended. I was like, oh good, that's good. I was worried that I might be like 90 or something like that.
Yeah.
Now again, I don't think these guys are using black hat methods like Lauren's tool set to really figure this out.
I'm
Never catch a break, do you, Lauren?
Yeah.
The article though was in fact pretty alarming.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
At this point, to be completely honest, I've just sort of given up on the whole thing. Like, I don't want anybody to steal my credit card number or my social security number, but outside of that, I'm pretty sure anybody who wants my data can probably get it. And like, the more time I spend worrying about it is not going to fix the issue. So unless I have an actual solution to implement, I just like the fact that my ads are at least targeted to my preferences.
Listen, when the credit reporting bureaus that you do not have a choice but to take part in, completely end up giving all your data to whomever, you really do eventually have to look at that and say there's no such thing as privacy anymore.
Right.
And then you hope that law keeps the use of that data in some rails that stops you from just being completely destroyed. Right.
And then the other one, well, you can either do it that way through the credit reporting agency, or maybe you can go get the, 179. Yeah, 179 gigabytes. Now, I'm not sure how that translates into customers, but apparently the U.S. government and Department of Homeland Security are a little bit miffed that Best Western had a breach. And what was it? It was AutoClerk, who they bought in August. So this is just like the situation with Marriott and Starwood, getting hacked. You go, but this was a really, really bad one, and boy, I don't know again what happened with Best Western's due diligence, but this data set had no security, no encryption, nothing. They just went in and went, oh, look what we found. And just absolutely insane. Yeah, but it was hosted on AWS with no security, an open database with all that information, and you go.
And it goes back
how
to
does
all
that not
the
get tracked down in due diligence? I don't know.
Well, because it goes back to all of the technology talking to one another and no one taking ownership of who's responsible for that. That's how this breach happened. It's exactly how this breach happened.
When you're buying that platform, you need to, that's kind of a key aspect of the
when you're buying
data
a
security.
PMS system, it talks to, your other systems, and there's no technology experts who are looking at it.
Well, the company who's acquiring that technology platform should be. But actually,
I agree.
when we sold our packaging company, the organization that acquired us, we had a clean room set up with the data running on a device that was not connected to the internet. We had keystroke logging, everything to make sure nobody was stealing the stuff who was coming to look at it. The group that originally bought us, they sent in their guy to do. He had been down twice before over a period of 90 days, but they never actually looked at the technology and what was going on until the morning of the announcement. There was no due diligence, which is crazy. Yeah. So this stuff happens, and it's like shame on those companies who do that. That's insane. It does not benefit your shareholders to be sloppy on buying a time bomb. So, yep. Poor Best Western learned the hard way. But they've got, when you have Homeland Security pissed off at you, that is not a good.
That's not a good day. That's not a good day.
That's not good.
Well,
anyway,
we have reached the 2 hours. Lily,
Wow.
thank you so much for being with us for a whole 2 hours. I mean, like I said,
I hope I didn't overstay my welcome. This was way too much fun to end.
I wanted to know what
Friday.
Lauren's score was. What was your findability score, Lauren?
Oh, I prefer not to say.
I think it's got to be high.
99.
I was 64.
You got a 6?
I was 64%.
64?
No.
But if you knew that I was married, that took me to 95%. So
yeah,
that's
I'm
great.
in the 90s. But I'm also the person that keeps every Google thing I've had since I made the Google account. So Google knows me better than I do when it comes to. I want to see what they can feed me.
Funny enough,
I
recently moved to one of the major brands' automated camera systems, and I realized as I was putting it in that they're probably running AI on their servers to identify what brands they can see through their camera.
Oh, that's a whole other topic.
Your expressions of what's happening when you're using certain brands.
Well, not even that. It doesn't matter. The fact is they're selling you cameras, and man, they really want you to buy the indoor ones. I only use the outdoor ones that point outwards, but they want the indoor ones because they want to peek into your kitchen and they want to peek into your living room. They want to see what brand television you have and what cable service you have, and AI can identify all of that. That's
AI is going. Is that Raisin Bran or shredded wheat?
I've already noticed in the sense, and this is very true. I have the Nest thermostat and everything, and I have everything all tied together with Ring and so forth. And I will see air filter for air conditioning air filters
on Amazon.
On Amazon, about the time my filter is ready to be replaced.
Yeah.
Well, guys,
convenient.
this is super fun, but I have to run.
All right. Well, thank you for all the time.
Of
Please
course.
come back. This was great.
Yeah, anytime. I would love to come back.
You have a standing invitation to always be back and join us whenever you like. As you see, we can have 6. Actually, when we go onto the new platform, we can have 10. So you can bring friends.
Wow. All right.
What is the new platform, Lauren?
You didn't show up for the test. It's actually pretty good.
Yeah, it actually is pretty cool. Yeah, you missed
I showed up for the
Robert.
test.
You missed test day. Holly was there even. So, yeah, you missed test day.
I bought it too.
Yeah. I noticed, Holly, that you do your newsletters that you talk about all the software. This stuff that we talk about. Is
this an AppSumo? AppSumo product?
Of course it is.
Yeah, it is. So, Lily, one last time. I know I've asked you a couple of times to do this. Your company, where people can find you.
Absolutely. I'm the CEO of Total Customized Revenue Management, also known as TCRM. You can find us online at www.tcrmservices.com. You can also email us at info@tcrmservices.com. And you can find all of our services there, including task force, outsourced revenue management for hire. You've got system audits on there, strategic assessments to set you up for the next year, which all of you should buy before our October sale ends on October 31st. They're 20% off for a limited time. Make sure you get yours signed up for this week. And hopefully I'll be back again later to tell you all sorts of interesting things, argue with a few more people.
Excellent.
And Holly is now launched. I just saw, I'm looking at the website, a revenue management system, and it's 21% off until the 31st. So.
Holly?
Yeah, for sure.
For those obviously who do not know who Holly is, Holly, what is it? Where can they find more about you?
Holly at influencer-sales.com. Sales training that help salespeople embrace building digital relationships?
Holly, how do you spell Holly?
HOLLY.
Just making sure people can find you.
Thank you very much.
Could have an eye.
Could have an
So
eye.
true.
IE.
Yeah, that's Robert. Where is it they can find you, kind sir?
Robert K. Cole on social media or rockcheetah.com.
And Mr. Edward StOnge.
Yes, it's very proper today.
Dr. StOnge.
I know.
You can find out,
It totally threw me.
you can find out more about Flip2 by going to flip.to. You can find me on social media, Edward StOnge. And Lauren Gray, if people want to go through
People are already tired of me, though.
of video that we have built up.
Yes, well, Vast Video Empire. Well, for now, it is still going to reside at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. There you'll find the link to this and all previous 219 shows. But it will be finding a new home soon. We're going to be migrating it to its own website strictly for the show. So that will be in times to come. But thank you very, very much, Liz, for making it today, taking the entire time with us today.
Yes,
and for everyone else that joined us live, and for those who just now joined us on LinkedIn for us being there, thank you so very much for your engagements and so forth. All the show notes and all the articles that Robert generously provided that we didn't get to will be in the show notes on all the platforms. You can go back and take a look at the entire agenda point. And these will be all rebroadcasted again at more reasonable times next week on APAC, HSMI's APAC and HSMI's EU Facebook platforms, as well as Instagram TV for all three. So until next week, 11:30 Eastern, 10:30 Central, thank you, everyone. We'll see you then.